Welcome back to the Money Script Podcast. It's your host, Johannes Harrison. As always, I am excited to be with each and every one of you. I am excited to be in your ear holes today. For those of you are watching on YouTube, well, I guess you're listening on YouTube and watching us on YouTube. We're still in your ear holes. Speaking of ear holes, I don't know what day you are listening to this, but today is a historic day. We're going to pause for a moment because the world was filled with excitement to see Andre 3000 finally drop an album. Yes. Yeah. However,
no words, no bars.
It's no bars. It's barless. Now, here's what I will say in his defense. He's an artist and he's sensitive about his shit. We've all heard that phrase before. Man. Hey, look here. I want y'all to know I did it for you, listeners. I did it for you. I've already listened to the entire album.
What'd you think about it?
It's a banger. What you talking about? Them flutes go hard. Listen, I'm gonna say you heard it here first. It's gonna be the most sampled hip hop artist album ever. Oh, you will, as you listen to it, once you get around, I think it's either track 3 or 4, you know what? You're going to start nodding your head like this. You're like, is that 2 Chainz? You're going to swear you heard 2 Chainz dropping some verses on those flutes. You're going to swear, like, was that Lil Wayne just now? And then for a moment, you're going to say, what if Andre just came back and rapped over his whole flute album?
So is it safe to say that he's going to be good at whatever he does? Is that where we are with that?
No. It's safe to say he's an artist and he's sensitive about his shit. I mean, look, it's kind of like one of those situations. I'll put it this way. Oh, actually, let me pause for a second because we were in the intro and I said something kind of earth shattering and our guests jumped in. So if you're listening, you're like, do I hear 2 voices? You do. Yes, I have a guest. So really quickly, let's take a moment to introduce Mr. Patrick Bentley. He is the founder of Tech Peer, good friend of mine. Also, for all of you that say, oh, that's a dope website, you're looking at him. So Patrick, good to have you on the show. Now back to Andre 3000. So y'all like, what does this have to do with money? Everything. So it is, I'm going to compare it to money. Okay. So I say to clients all the time that what we're seeking is not retirement. Okay. Retirement is a phrase they made up in the 40s because prior to then you just died at work or while working. But a lot of times, your work was your farm, whatever. So yeah, you died while working. You never stopped working. But then as the Industrial Revolution kicked off, people got to a point in time where their body or their mind said, I can't do this anymore. Because a lot of the work was very physical. You're talking assembly lines, things of that nature. And so this idea of retirement. And if you want to have some fun, look up Ida Mae Fuller. She was the first person to receive a Social Security check. The numbers are astounding. I'm going to say them wrong, but basically she put like $25 into the plan and took like, I don't know, $15,000 out. It's ridiculous because she lived to be 100. Okay. They were like, oops. Yeah. But that's Social Security. That's why it is what it is. But my point is that this idea of retirement is not what I strive for with clients. And a lot of us financial advisors, especially those of us that are fiduciaries, what we say to our clients is that what you want to be able to create is financial independence. And financial independence is a point in time where you have enough capital, sources of income, not that Dave Ramsey 12%, 8% withdrawal rate, not that. I'm not going to talk about that again. I know y'all tired of me talking about that, but it just drives me crazy. But it's having enough capital, assets, resources, sources of income that working becomes an option. And you can then take that time, that energy to pursue other things because you're not dependent upon the income of the job. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? I'm pretty sure at least on an artistic level. I mean, there was actually an announcement just came out last week. I think Outkast is the first artist to go like triple diamond or something ridiculous, something like that. You saw that? It was something about that. My point is he's reached a point in his artistic career is that he doesn't need our love and adoration or us to buy his albums. He gets to make music. And whether we like it or not, he's just out there making music. He's not Kanye West, y'all. Kanye West is boom, bust, boom, bust, boom, bust. Okay. I'm just be honest. I can throw away at least 3 of Kanye's albums and would never miss them.
Facts.
Am I lying? Okay.
Facts.
So, but that's, and then Kanye just leaked everything he had recently. Well, I mean, maybe he didn't leak it. Maybe his cousin stole his laptop again. Google that if you want. But he just, all his stuff just came out a few months ago, and some of it's okay. But no, Andre 3 Stacks took the time to learn new instruments, travel all over the world, playing them in coffee shops, sat down with Rick Rubin, probably did some meditation and some, what's the mushroom? Ayahuasca. So I don't know how to say it.
Ayahuasca.
Yeah, that stuff. Probably did some of that. And he's like, hey, I'm going to do this flute album. Let's go.
Yeah.
I support you, 3 Stacks. You know what? If no one else wants it, I'll take it. We will, if you allow me, Andre, I will play any of your tracks on my podcast every single time. And you can have whatever royalty that, I don't know. I'm not getting paid anything for the podcast, so there's nothing to be made. But guess what? People will hear it. And they will hear me champion you. Dre, I respect you. Good work. Who would have thought I could tie Andre 3000 to financial independence? Y'all got to love it. So this is the Money Script Podcast. What we're here to talk about is helping you improve your financial literacy. I bring guests onto the show that can tell you about their journey in the business that they're building and whatever career that they have. And of course, we'll talk about a little bit of money in it as well. So with no further ado, let's get to our esteemed guest today. Again, Mr. Patrick Bentley. Not only is he the founder of his own company, he is also a global lead of specialized training. That's a heck of a title. I'm pretty sure he made that up. He was like, here's what you're going to call me. This is what I'm going to do. This is the name we're going to give it. For Google. Say it again.
I'm literally the first one. So
what did I say? I said that. I didn't know that going in. I said that.
Yeah.
See? So, and he is at the company, the verb of a company that we all know, Google. Okay. Yes, y'all. There are Black people at Google. He is one of them. He is one of them. So let's get into it. So let's start with Google. I mean, how'd you end up at Google? Where were you before? Did you go to school? Did you go to Google school? How did you end up there?
Yeah, so that's a long it's a long journey. I can probably boil it down into about two to 3 minutes. Okay. I think it's best to probably start where I'm at, and then it'll make more sense about my journey, right? So there's no school, right? There's no school for any of this stuff. I don't have a traditional I guess route into tech. So what I do now for Google is I essentially make really advanced training for our enterprise customers. So I work for Google Cloud, right? And there is sort of all this off-the-shelf training that any organization could take or any person could take if they want to learn how to build things on Google Cloud, right? And that could be architecting or developing or, a host of things, right? That these are typical scenarios that a person would or an organization would, try to solve, right? Data engineering, et cetera. But there are times when our larger customers have more unique problems, we say, or more advanced problems, and they need to enable their tech team on how to do those things. And so they will bring in me and my colleagues, and what we'll do is we will actually go in with the customer and we'll scope that training, and then we'll make training around whatever problem is they're trying to solve. And then we create hands-on learning environments, and which requires us to mock different scenarios and make those scenarios in a sort of, let's just call it like a sandbox, if you will, called Quick Labs. And so it's this really unique blend of consulting and, being what I would call like a technology generalist and understanding, just how organizations are doing what they do currently, and then knowing about the cloud and knowing about machine learning and being able to implement all these different things or go learn about them very quickly so that we can, be prescriptive in what we do. And so me particularly, I'm the lead. And as the business lead, what I do is I, manage the day-to-day activities, but then I'm also responsible for the P&L, right? The profit and loss of that business yearly. So that requires me to create strategy. It requires me to figure out new ways, figure out new methods of revenue, right? And it also requires me to just oversee the overall health of the business. So I really like what I do because it's this really unique mix of being a technical person, but also being a business person. And it's really a good illustration of like who I think I am, like as a professional. So how did I get there? I think the short story is experimentation, right? So so I graduated from Morehouse with a psychology degree, right? So I
time out. Supposed to lead with that, my fellow Morehouse man. Shout out to class of 24. I will be there with you. I'll be able to say I graduated from Morehouse as well. You're supposed to lead with those things. Let's see. I think you are now the second Morehouse alum. Yeah, you're number 2. You're number 2.
Yeah, you got to get on that. You got to get on that.
Oh, no. You're number. Well, we had a professor on here too.
So. Okay, so he's more esteemed, right? But man, so I graduated from Morehouse with a psychology degree. No plans.
Oh, you're one of them smarty arts. Okay, psychology degree. What am I thinking right now?
I have no idea, man. Hence why I don't do that. I'm not in that career field, right? And so the story there, man, is that I'm a self-taught developer. So I started teaching myself how to code. I started a nonprofit in Savannah, Georgia, which is my hometown. The mission of that nonprofit was really just to teach kids how to code. And once I started doing that, started talking about it, started evangelizing for it, then people started asking me for like, hey, can you do my website? Hey, can you build an app for me? And so what I didn't realize at the time was that as I was running this nonprofit and going and getting my 501c3 and, creating strategic partnerships, that I was essentially learning how to run a business, right? Like I was learning how to grow my business, and I was learning how to recruit people, and I was learning how to create programs and like all these different things, right? And I was just kind of learning it on my own. And did that for a couple of years. And man, I mean, it sucked, right? Like, I mean, it was great in terms of the impact that I had, like I took it from just an idea in my head to a 501c3 organization. And I was partnering with like companies like Gulfstream and AT&T, and I'm partnering with the city of Savannah, and like, people know who I am. Right. And, but it's really hard, or it was for me, creating enough money to support myself, right? So the other part of the story is that, I had a kid when I was really young. So I had a kid in 2008, right? I had my son. I got custody of my son. And so, for me, making money and having stability was really important. So anyway, long story short, that led to me getting recruited to do a job in economic development. I became a project manager there. And my job was to recruit companies to come to the Savannah area, which was really cool. It was tech companies, right? Because they knew I knew the tech, and they knew I knew how to work a room. One of the things that I did is that I was recruiting coding boot camps to the area. And then I recruited a company to the area and then convinced my boss that I needed to go to this boot camp. So long story short, like that led to me going to, getting my first tech job. Then I went to overseas in Bahrain and did like a big migration over there for Amazon Web Services. And then Amazon Web Services recruited me. And so I actually went to work as a technical trainer with Amazon Web Services. And throughout all of this time, I've like had my own startup, right? It wasn't successful, but I've always been entrepreneurial. And so ultimately, I was working at AWS. One of my colleagues left there, told me about a position that was open. I applied for it. When I applied and was going through the interview panels, the person who essentially is now my manager decided to give me a more senior role because he felt like I had a really good mix of business and tech. And so that's how I got here, man. Honestly, kind of on the same lines of just experimenting, right? A lot of it was necessity, but just over the years, man, just trying things out.
So you've worked for two of the largest tech companies in the world.
Yeah. I have, man.
And you went to Morehouse.
And I went to Morehouse. Yeah. I've been very fortunate, man, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's beautiful story. It's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about your current role as a founder
Yeah.
with Tech Peer Consulting, or just is Tech Peer Consulting or Tech Peer?
Just Tech Peer.
Just
So
Tech
the
Peer.
legal name is Tech Peer Consulting, but it's just Tech
Okay.
Peer, right?
I was like, I think my bill said Tech Peer
Yeah.
Consulting. So that's
Yeah. So
why it's stuck in my head. So Tech Peer,
yeah,
as the t-shirt says,
yeah,
So
man.
um
I've like I said, I've always had businesses, man. Since I knew how to code, I've always had some type of agency, some type of LLC to where I could deliver that service, right? And I've been iterating on that idea over the years. So I feel like now I've got a really good sort of, I think as I've matured as a person and as a professional, so has my business. So TechPeer is my company, right? It's an agency. And what we largely focus on is on three things, right? And those three things are professional services. So, website building, web app building, mobile app development, software development. So we do all those kinds of things, data engineering, machine learning engineering. Pretty much at this point, there's not really too much from a technical standpoint that we can't implement. But then we also do consulting. So one of the things that I've also got into in the last couple of years is angel investing. And once you get into angel investing, then you meet other angel investors. I'm a part of the Black Angel Group, which is just a bunch of Googlers and ex-Googlers who invest into early stage startups. But people start to reach out to you, right? Like they're like, okay, this guy's technical. He works at Google. Can you help a company out? So I started doing consulting because of that, because I realized that there is a specific need that startups have, right? Like many, especially if they're non-technical. So I do a lot of consulting that's more strategy consulting and, infrastructure reviews and just really kind of looking at the approach that companies are taking and making sure that it's scalable, making sure that it's secure, that kind of thing. I've also recently gotten into doing just more consulting for, small businesses that are successful and they, are getting to a point where they need to start being smarter with their data, right? So I'm doing things like helping folks implement, data visualization tools and data insights. And then the third thing that I do is training, right? So TechPeer also does training. I use a lot of contractors. It's not just me, but yeah, man, I'm taking the skills that I have over the years and leveraging that into another stream of revenue for myself.
So I want to talk about not necessarily machine learning, but the bards and chat GPTs of the world. What is that called?
Yeah,
that's called
generative AI.
Generative AI.
Yeah,
that stuff. So there's a lot of people that have expressed concern about losing their jobs because of these technological advances. And I hear them to a certain point.
Yeah, that's a valid fear, I think.
I mean, it was a valid fear for the people that made horse buggies to be worried about cars taking their jobs. It was a valid fear for the people that made oil lanterns about electricity taking their job. It was a valid fear of the people that, to say it again, I'm sorry.
So all those things are still around too. FYI.
They are still around. Yeah, they're still horse and buggies, just not as much high demand.
Just not as many.
The abacus, they were scared of the calculator. So I mean, but that's technology. I mean, Kodak. Rest in peace. So there's always going to be these technologies that are going to evolve the way that we do things. I was listening to Barack Obama speak on a tech podcast, and I'll link it in the show for those who want to hear the full interview. And one of the things that he shared around AI, it was about music, actually. He said, it's probably okay if AI takes over elevator music, but part of what we want when it comes to having, I'm paraphrasing here, of course, of an artist, is we want to see the rawness of the artist. We want to see them make mistakes and try new things, and that live presence of them. So yeah, maybe because Barako said he is the most AI regenerated person, one of the most high AI regenerated persons in the world, you know, using his voice and like to make him say all sorts of crazy things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he also shared that he is the original like internet president. I didn't realize that until he said it.
Yeah,
I'm like,
he was the
oh,
first president to like use the internet intentionally for his campaign.
yes. He was
Yeah.
also the first president to carry around a cell phone everywhere he went.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
BlackBerry to be exact. I was like, oh,
Oh wait,
geez,
man, a lot has changed in 2008.
A lot has changed. There's a lot of change. Yeah. So I'm just curious for you, to someone that is technically working for the devil that's going to take all the jobs away. What are your thoughts on AI and innovation and just the future?
Yeah, man. So I recently heard someone talk about technology, and they made a really interesting analogy, right? Like to say that, you know, the technology of the day is, you can compare it to kind of like the soil, right? Like the layers of the earth, right? So every, you know, if you were to, you know, take a slice of the earth, right, there's all of these different layers, right? There's like sedimentary rock and, you know, metamorphic rock and all these different sort of layers, right? But
man, you pay attention to biology. I could not. My brain was like rocks.
I had to pull that out, bro. To be honest, I was like, what are those things called? But like, you know, there are all these different layers, and you know,
mantle, crust.
There's all of that, right? And as you sort of look through, you know, if you were to take a slice out of this, right, like there, you can see sort of the story of the earth, right? The different phases, and, you know, even the fossils of animals that then become our fuel, right? And we use that, and then we make oil. But technology is just like that, right? So each new technology basically uses the former technology or the former technological age in order to kind of jump off and be the new one, right? So there wouldn't, you know, without the wheel, you know, there would not be, you know, like you mentioned, maybe the horse and buggy, right? And without, you know, the horse and buggy, then there wouldn't be cars, right? And all these other things that have had to happen, right? Combustion engines and assembly lines and, you know, all of these different things that have had to happen across the way, across time, in order for us to get to different technology, right? And the same is true of our cell phones that you mentioned. So there are so many little small technological innovations that had to happen and then had to get cheap enough for us to create that phone that we now all use every single day. The same is true of AI and generative AI, right? So there would be no generative AI without the internet, right? Because the technology to create artificial intelligence and machine learning has actually been around for decades, right? Like it's been around maybe since the 60s or the 70s, right? The actual mathematical idea that we could, you know, use data and teach a machine how to take the data and then find associations based on mathematical principles and mathematical logic. But we were missing two things, right? We were missing the compute power in order to do that. Because, you know, one thing to mention is that, you know, my phone has 16 gigabytes of RAM, right? It has 256 gigabits of memory. That is more powerful. Like if you were to show that to the first person who invented the computer, they would lose their minds, right? Like we have
especially if you showed it to them in the size that it is now.
Yeah,
they'd be like, where's the rest of it? They're like, there's no way.
Like I remember
they point to a closet. They were like, this is 1 gig. What are you talking about?
Right. And not even a gig. I mean, so like, you know, I remember my first computer, it had like 4 kilobytes of RAM. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so anyway.
Oh, you remember floppy disk? You remember those things?
Floppy disks and like number munchers. But
I wonder how many albums, how many songs you can put on a floppy disk. There's
none, probably none.
Somebody look it up. Put it, tweet me. Tell me how many could I fit Andre 3000's album on a floppy disk?
You maybe
or a 3x5.
Maybe a song, right? Like
maybe
I don't even know if you could fit a song on there. But so anyway, so you know, we needed to have computation power, and then we also needed enough data for that to happen. right? Which none of this would have been possible without the internet and without mobile phones, right? So whether we're all of that to say, whether we are scared or not, right? Like this is just the natural progression of technological advancement, right? And we have been okay and we will be okay, right? Is the overall of that.
So you're saying we're not going to get the Terminator in our lifetime. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
No, I don't think so, right? Like we're, you know, while
Kids.
all of these things seems like magic, right? Like and they are really advanced technologies, ultimately there's still a lot of imperfection. If you've used Bard, if you've used GPT, right?
So
like there's
many
a lot
if you use them, yes. If you actively use them, they are imperfect. Actually, I will quote my father. He told me this a long time ago when I got my first Atari, dating myself. I was getting mad. What game? What was the game? The Galactica or something? Maybe that was I don't know. Yeah, I think it was Galactica or something. Yeah, you should. Yeah, pew 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 pew. Yeah. So I remember with my little joystick with a little red dot on the top. I remember I kept getting out. I kept failing at it. I'm like, I don't know, 6 years old, whatever. And at one moment, I got mad and kind of like threw it down. I was like, stupid Atari. And my father just, you know, in his eloquent way, just said to me, the computer only does what you tell it to, and just walked off.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to figure that out. But then once I figured it out, I became actually a lot better at video games. It was like, I just have to tell it what it's only going to do what I tell it to do. If I don't recognize the patterns, that's my fault. The computer has a pattern. It's on me for not recognizing it. It's not, there's back then, I still don't think there's a lot of, I mean, I know these days there's probably some random code because we can use randomization of numbers to make characters interact with each other. But still, you're only going to get slight variations even with the random code. So all of them have a pattern. So once you figure out the pattern, you figure out the game. So I feel the same way about this technology. It's like they all have a script. Money script. Look at that. They all have a script. The program, and that's why it's program. It has a script. Once you learn how that script is, how to use that script, then you will also start to see the flaws in it.
Yeah. So I will say though, like this is a little different because we are now making these computers and these machines intelligent, right? Like they can generate their own content, but that content is trained based on our the content
our input. It's our input. It's all it's
so,
not nothing new under the sun.
We are quite literally creating a new thing and making it in our own image, whether we like it or not, right?
Ooh,
and so I think the biggest fear is like, well, is it going to take our jobs, right? And I don't think that AI is going to take your job, but I think that people that use AI will take your job, right? Like that are going to be using these things. I think, like to me, it's not like there's a difference between a human and what, Bard can generate, right? It's like, it's good, it's passable, but it's not what you or I would write. But I think the power of it is that now it takes us less time to do the things that we used to do. So, if you're in legal, right, for a corporation and you write the same types of contracts, 50 times a day, guess what? Now it doesn't take you as much time to do that, right? If you're in procurement and you're writing contracts, if you're, it touches every single facet of life, every what we call line of business, right? Whether it's marketing, whether it is, just administrative work, whether it's developers and how efficient they are, anything IT, like generative AI will touch all of those functions. And then what's really cool about it is you can fine tune it to your specific use cases. So I think, you're back to the wisdom of your father. I think the days of tomorrow belongs to the people that understand what's happening behind the curtain, right? So like my call to action would be for anybody who's afraid to just realize that like you're wasting time being afraid, because the box is already open. We're not going back, right? Like there is no going back, right? And so what we should be focused on is understanding the technology, understanding how to use it, where's the benefit, where are the flaws, right? Where can it be dangerous? And we need to be making sure that we have a lot of people that understand the technology, both like on a under the hood level, but then also on a just day-to-day level. Because if you're a business owner, right, like I'm using it to write proposals, right? I'm using it to write content for my blog. I'm using it, you know what I mean? And now things that used to take me 2 hours.
Outlines for podcasts.
Yeah, right. Like, so things that, so if you're not using that, you're going to lose your competitive advantage, right? If you had one to begin with. And so if you're in the business world, like get on that, get on it, read the books, go learn how to prompt, learn how to interact with it. Because that is really going to be I think the differentiator between, like next year, 5 years from now, the new millionaires and those that kind of fizzled out. It's going to be who's able to leverage this technology the best.
And I want to thank Bard for turning this podcast episode into a blog, because that is something we're going to start doing next year. We're just going to take the transcript from it, tweak it a little bit, give it a little narrative. We're going to let the Bard do that, because it's going to have all the podcast data there. And I'm like, man, how we crank out so many blogs? Because he told his computer to do it.
And one other thing I would say, and then I'll stop, because I know we got some other topics, but data is going to become really important. If you are a business owner, realize that everything that you generate is data, right? All of your media, all of like your Slack channels, like all of those things are data, right? And there are a lot of relationships and trends that you may not be able to see with your naked eye, right? And so leverage these technologies, right? Like things that used to take, going and hiring a data analyst to figure out, now you can just do it with natural language if you know what to ask, right?
If you
and
know
so,
what to ask,
and so like, learn how to ask, learn about it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So I do, as you said, yes, in the essence of time, we got a couple other topics to get to. Well, one specific topic to get to. So with every guest on the show, we want to learn about their money script. And part of your money script is developed at a very young age with the first interactions that you have with money. So Patrick, what is your first memory of money?
Man, so I couldn't think of what my first memory was of money, but I think I figured out what was probably one of my earliest like thing or memory that I had that really kind of left something with me, right? Like it left an impression on me about money. And I think it's really two different things that happened, but they're the same exact sort of dynamic. So I grew up in Savannah, right? I grew up in West Savannah. My parents, my mom was, blue collar. She worked at Georgia Pacific. My dad worked on the ports, and, for many people, right? Like, even if I was not poor, right? Like my lights never went off. I never went hungry. You know what I mean? Like, my mom always had a car. She got a new car every, 5 or 6 years or whatever. My father made good money. So, but if you're Black, right, and you're working class, typically that means that even if you're working class or lower middle class, you're going to live around other Black people, which means that you're going to live around poor people, right? And so my peers were not, the people that I grew up around were oftentimes not as fortunate as I was. And my neighborhood, I was probably seen as like one of the, more fortunate, more affluent members of the community. Mm-hmm. And then for high school, I went to a majority white Catholic private school, right? I played football there. And that was the first time that I realized that there are levels to money. Right, like there's levels to money. You know what I mean?
Like, you rich.
Yeah, like so. Whereas like, people were looking at me because we had a house, because like, we had decent clothes, and because my mom had a car, and like, all these little things like, oh no, y'all are rich. And then I go and I get around like actual like rich people, you know what I mean? Like old money rich, you know what I'm saying? And then you realize like, oh, well, I'm 16 and I'm, my first car was an Oldsmobile Delta 88, right? And like the fact that my mom and dad could scrape money together and get me a car, like I was considered spoiled in my neighborhood. But I knew kids that were driving brand new
You saw
cars.
Becky and her BMW. Yes, you did.
You
I
know what I'm
know. I
saying?
saw
Like,
Becky and her BMW. It happened to me too. I went to private school, 10th grade, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, this is
Now,
different.
Yeah.
This is different. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so like, I remember that. I remember like, and that was a hell of a dynamic to have, to go home to my neighborhood, but then to be in this school with like truly like, I guess just more financially affluent folks. Mm-hmm. And then I went to Morehouse, which, if you know anything about Morehouse, as you do, right? Like, so at that time, there's kind of like the racial divide, right? I'm from the South. I'm going to school with a bunch of white kids. Yeah, white people are rich. We know this, right? Like, yeah, right? Or some of them are, right? Like that, the wealth is largely divided by, or at least in my mind at that time, largely divided by racial lines, right? And then I went to Morehouse, and Morehouse is, there's a span, there's a spectrum of people that go to that school. There are
melting
people like
pot of socioeconomic. Yeah.
Yeah, but then there are, there's the creme de la creme. There's the black bourgeoisie that also attends this school, and then that was just another data point for me that was kind of like, damn, there's levels to this, right? Like I have friends who, their parents bought them townhomes, you know what I'm saying, in Atlanta because they were going to school there, kind of thing, right? And so I feel like that was probably my first memory of money, is just realizing that like there are levels to it. You know what I'm saying? Like there's levels to this money thing. And like, that's always sort of stuck with me, right? Like no matter, you make $1 million a year, there's somebody making 20, there's somebody, and then let's not compare that to like, Jeff Bezos money or something, right? Like there's levels to money.
Indeed. Yeah. Indeed. That's, oh man, I thank you for that, because that brings me back to, I have similar memories, because as I mentioned, I went to a private school in elementary, but I wasn't as aware financially, because that was when my family was doing fairly well. 2 cars, things were going good. But then my mom got ill, and things weren't going so well, and that's when I realized, oh wait, we're poor. But then I managed to get a scholarship to go to a private school, and football, just like you, I'm like, okay. Yeah, I'm like, oh, what's your first car? Oh, I got this 86 Mazda 323, but I'm working on changing the alternator on it. Okay, I'll drive. Hop in my BMW drop top. Like, what is this? Oh, is this your mom's car? No, it's mine.
Yeah, it's very different. Very different.
Didn't have the internet back then, but if I did, I would have gone like, how much does this cost? But then I found out that her parents were basically the BMW dealers of Charlotte, North Carolina. I was like, that is your last name. Duh.
Went to school with the same type of people, right? Like, like I know your last name. Like, oh, you're that person.
Oh, that's you. Oh, that's your. You have 2 BMWs. Okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic, man. I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic to have to go through. And it also, I think it just, and I think, my young mind couldn't really articulate it, but what I was really watching or observing was the wealth gap, right? So like there are people that I live around who if you were to ask them about Patrick and how he grew up, would be like, oh, Patrick had it good, right? His parents had cars, he had clothing, he had food, right? He had a house that his parents owned, right? Like all that kind of stuff. But that's kind of like table stakes for many other people, right? That's the bare minimum. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, listen, Patrick, we appreciate you spending some time with us on the Money Script podcast. Man, we had fun today. There was a lot of nuggets in there. This is going to be one you're going to have to listen to a couple times so you can pull it all out, because we were dropping knowledge about Andre 3000. We were dropping knowledge about AI. Patrick was talking about starting 501c3s. And actually, you got me thinking, Patrick, there might be a moment for that again. I mean, we have this huge revolution. So that's the other thing Obama said. I wanted to say that Obama, I forgot who he was talking to. He mentioned another meeting he was in on this podcast. Now I'll link the podcast here on the show because it's a great interview. He said that he was talking to someone. Oh, he didn't mention the name. He couldn't mention the name, but he was talking to someone very prominent in the technology space. And he said, if you were to compare what this AI revolution is, if you were to try to describe it, like how big is this? And the answer was, do you remember electricity? It's that big.
Yeah.
I had to rewind that myself. I was like, wait, what?
100%. The world's not going to ever be the same again. Like, this is what do they call it? It's an inflection point, right?
Inflection point.
We're literally about to watch legit. Remember when the iPhone came out? And how that, people often just don't think about how that changed how we do business.
I think about it all the time. I sit and daydream about the fact that I could email from anywhere. I mean, I'll even give the BlackBerry a little bit of credit, but let's just say the smartphone. Let's say iPhone. People give iPhone a lot of credit when the smartphone came out.
No doubt. Period. But I think, the iPhone was something special because it created this evolution of apps, right? There were no apps and app stores and all of that. But anyway, this is revolutionary, bro. This is something different for sure.
Hey, listen, people, there's lots of information out there so you can start to brush up your skills. What I was saying, Patrick, maybe we should have a little conversation. I got some inroads to some schools out here. We might want to drum up that little 501c3, teach these kids how to prompt ChatGPT, teach these teachers not to be afraid of it, or in Bard, ChatGPT, both of them. Google, don't cancel me. But we got to teach these teachers not be afraid of it. And we got to teach the students how to use it, because you're like you said, it's going to be a question on when you're filling out an application. Do you know how to prompt fill in the AI technology? If you don't, they're going to go to the person that can. So
100%, man. So we got a lot of work to do. With that. Yeah, man. I'm all about that. Let's have the conversation.
Let's have it. So again, thank you for spending some time on the Money Script podcast. Oh, I shouted you out several times, but if there are other business owners that want to learn from you, whether it's on the big scale, they need the Google Analytics to come in, the specialized training, or if they need to, like I do, all of you that say, "Oh, I love your website," this is the guy. Where can they find you, sir?
Yeah, so you can always reach out to me through my website, which is techpeerconsulting.com. I'm also you can find me easily on LinkedIn. One thing that I will mention is I'm actually dropping a course in the next, month or two, probably in the new year, called Tech for the Rest of Us. And so it's going to be all about introducing technical concepts to people who don't have any tech background, right? And not really how do you do this, but literally let's just understand what a database actually is. What is DNS? What are these things? And so, yeah, man, I'm please reach out to me if there's any website work. But yeah, you can always find me on LinkedIn or techpeerconsulting.com.
All right, we'll put his links in the show notes. Again, y'all know what I'm about to say right now. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to come get your dose of financial literacy. We all need it. And give Andre 3000 some creative space.
Yeah, man. Get out, man.
Play the flute. Y'all didn't talk about Lizzo and her flute. Actually, we can't really talk about Lizzo right now because she got some other things going on. But she was fluting, and y'all was all about it. Like, oh, she played the flute. 3 Stacks like, I flute too. Okay? Enjoy the flute. It's a great album. Trust me, it's good. Trust me. Y'all take care.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks for joining us on the Money Script podcast. Be sure to check out our other episodes, subscribe, follow, and give us 5 stars. Continue to send your financial questions on Twitter or Instagram at The Money Script. Go to moneyscriptwealth.com and schedule your complimentary consultation to discuss your specific goals and concerns. Financial advisory and investment management services are offered by Money Script Wealth Management PLLC, a registered investment advisory firm registered in the state of Texas and California and other states where exempt. The Money Script LLC and the Money Script Wealth Management PLLC and guests of the episode may have interest in the investments mentioned today. The opinions and views are expressed here are for informational purposes only. This material is educational in nature and should not be deemed as a solicitation for any specific product or service. All investments involve risk and a significant loss of principal. The Money Script nor Money Script Wealth Management offer tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney for specific advice about your situation. Until next time.